Now's the time to finally realize we the people must make some choices. If we want single-payer health care, now's the time to raise our voices.
Thank you all for coming to another yet electrifying monthly meeting of PNHP Washington. We acknowledge that Washington State contains the traditional territory of the many Native American peoples. The presence pervades the lands and waters surrounding us. May we nurture our relationship with our Native neighbors and the shared responsibilities to their homelands where we all reside today.
I guess next on the agenda would be just some updates. We were at the May 1st March at Cal Anderson Park. I think we had our banner there, and the march down through Washington through the city of Seattle for several blocks after that. There was another one there. What was it? The hands off thing that I think we were at too. And that was a pretty big one, and it was nice going home because there was so many people carrying signs there. All the buses were totally crowded there. So we were there with the sign, and we got some stuff coming up we can talk about later. Next was going to be an update of the moral injury survey. Anyway, do you guys know what the moral injury survey is? This is something that PNHP National is prioritizing, a survey asking physicians and other types of providers to talk about what the effect of working in our corporatized system is on them, taking away the ability to do things that they need to do for their patients, but are unable to do because of the system within which they work based on either the group practice they work in or the medical insurance. We got money from the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, and the idea is to get maybe a couple thousand responses. Now there's almost 1,000 get responses to this. It only takes about 10 minutes. It's anonymous. So if there's any physicians or other providers here, you can click on this link here and you'll go and read more about it. The idea is to collect these, analyze them, and release a major analysis-driven practices block us from providing the care we know our patients need, and also it's affecting our patients because they can't get what they need. So that survey is going to be analyzed and released in the fourth quarter of this year. PNHP has done a couple of similar surveys in the past couple of years, looking at the overcosting of Medicare Advantage plans, and was quoted all over the place. So this is going to be an important thing coming up. And at the Seattle Surgical Society meeting this past Monday, Hugh and I were there, and Hugh was allowed 2 or 3 minutes to talk about it, and I passed around flyers with this. Dana, you want to talk about National Day of Action?
All of you may have heard of the May 31st National Day of Action. That was started by an organization called National Single Payer, which has been around for 3 or 4 years. It's an organization of healthcare advocates pushing for single payer on a national level. So the impetus behind doing this May 31st event, which will occur nationally, was to elevate the conversation for establishing a single payer program or Medicare for all on a national level. The conversation seems to have died down a bit. It was elevated after Luigi Mangione did his thing, a pretty horrific thing, but he did elevate the conversation, and there was lots of conversation about healthcare and how insurance companies are totally screwing a lot of people over. So National Single Payer thought we should elevate this conversation and keep it going amongst the public. So they established this May 31st Day of Action. And I think we have like almost 30 cities that are participating in this action. We're also having an action here in Seattle on May 31st, which will occur at Westlake Park starting at noon. We have a lineup of speakers. We have musicians coming. There'll be some literature. Backbone will be there. I'm not sure Bill will be there, but Backbone will be there. And several organizations have endorsed this action as well, including Backbone, the Green Party of Washington State, PNHP Washington, Veterans for Peace, Washington Physicians for Social Responsibility, Whole Washington, and Workers Strike Back.
I'm thinking that maybe I should pass this on to SEIU 925. That's our chapter, retiree chapter. Some of the people, most of them in Seattle, might be interested in joining you.
Anyway, there'll be a lot more information coming out about this May 31st action shortly, because the planning committee has met, 3 times now, more or less finalized it with the speakers, and we got Jim Page. People know him, the singer, and One World Band. Hopefully we'll get 200 or 300 people there. All right, now it's my pleasure to introduce Bill Moyer, the executive director of the Backbone campaign that I've known for many years, I think 15 years or so now. Bill and Backbone have always provided the quote artful activism behind any kind of demonstration or thing that we've done in Washington and Seattle area, including the famous Count Bleed You Dry demonstration out in front of, what is it, one of the big insurance company offices in downtown Seattle, where, we had a little parade through Seattle, and it was one of our wonderful ones. But there's always banners, and if you were at Cal Anderson Park, or that there was a big banner there, or the May Day 1st demonstration. Backbone's always available, and I'm amazed how the organization has grown since I first knew about it, and I've been on the board, I think, for 8 or 10 years or something like that. But it started with 2 staff members, right? But now it's blown up to 1 staff member.
It started out with 0 staff members, then eventually I made it my job. So
and now you're going to tell us, but now there's 4, and they're going all around the country all the time, providing support for progressive groups with their demonstrations. You've seen light projections, it's kind of a Backbone thing that they perfected. And of course, banners over freeways, all the buttressing and supporting progressive groups that are doing their thing. Artful activism, and now Bill is going to talk to us about how this continues to be and is even more important now in the days of the Trump, time of Trump, which we're in now. So we got
artful activism in the time of Trump.
Whatever we can to support the Backbone campaign. So take it away, Bill.
Thank you. Patience with me. I'm going to do try to share a slideshow, try to give a little sense of where Backbone has been and where we're going, and how this administration has sort of shifted. So Backbone campaign is about 21 years old. We started with a bunch of artists creating an affinity group on Vashon Island. And I don't have any early Backbone pictures for you here, but you can imagine a 70-foot Backbone, spandex and kite rods outside the 2004 Democratic National Convention. That was one of our initial efforts, and giving Backbone awards to politicians who were standing up to the Bush administration, which we thought that was exact as worse as it could possibly get, right? Okay. Yeah, because we were afraid. We were afraid after 9/11 and the Patriot Act. There was a moment of fear, right? That people wouldn't be able to take action. And so that affinity group started by taking action as boldly as it could, with its using the skills that it had, with giant Bush's Caesar on a float in I think it was February, or the big 1 million person international march to stop the invasion of Iraq. And prior to that, we were doing oil men leading us into disaster over the overpasses. And that was our first time doing overpass bannering. And it was during that time when the police, at one point, detained one of our people. And then we talked to a lawyer. We realized, we are allowed to do that. We can We can be there. As long as we don't attach it to the overpass or drape it over. So we went back out. We thought we were going to have a video camera, and that was the days before the phone was the video camera. And so we were coming over from Vashon Island. This is a bunch of, artists who don't necessarily naturally get up at 5:30 in the morning to get on a ferry to be over the overpass at 7 a.m. So I searched through my messy car, my chronically messy car. No matter which car I have, it's always chronically got all kinds of stuff in it. I knew that there was a Walkman that didn't have a tape, didn't have batteries, and didn't have the capacity to record. But I thought it would be a cool prop. So I put it in my pocket. And then sure enough, the police started arriving saying, oh, you can't have a big sign. You have to have a small sign. You can walk back and forth. And so I pulled it out of my pocket. And I held it down below eye level. And I went click saying, are you trying to tell me that there's a law that says we can walk back and forth, but we can't have a big sign and blah, blah, blah? It doesn't sound right to me as far as we know. This is a First Amendment. We're exercising our First Amendment. This is protected speech. And as long as we don't attach it and don't drape it over the overpass, which would be unsafe, we can remain here. But so why don't you call your commanding officer? And then one car after another comes in, pretty soon KUOW is talking about a delay. There's police activity on the Yesler overpass. And finally, the commanding officer from the State Patrol comes in and says, so I understand we haven't, what's going on here? I said, my understanding is this is a First Amendment protected speech. He said, that's correct. As long as you do not attach it to the overpass or drape it over the overpass, you cannot drape it over the overpass and you cannot attach it to the overpass. I said, well, we know those rules. We respect that. So as long as we don't do that, we can reset up our banner and continue our action. He said, yes. And this whole huddle of cops goes grumble, 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 and they do about faces and walk back to their cars. So that was the first place where we got to lean into that space of a little bit of fear and push against an imaginary boundary or an assumed boundary and extend that limit. For many years, we've helped with creative protests around the country. Part of that introduced us to the fighting against coal trains and oil trains and coal ports and all of that. Got us curious about railroads, because Backbone Campaign is fundamentally a movement building organization. And so when we here, let's see if I can get this thing to go. Oops. There we go. And when we see that you can think about railroads, is that they're naturally intersecting with lots of different folks' kind of lives, different sectors of society, workers, environmental justice, tribes, farmers, passengers, green energy folks, the railroad industry, rural communities, et cetera, et cetera. So we started really leaning into that, looking at that. And we, from 2013 to 2016, we worked on creating a book called The Solutionary Rail. And it was because a railroad worker said, hey, here was a paper from 2008. Why don't you and your people see if you can green it? Because he was kind of a radical railroad worker. And, anyway, so I'm not going to get into that story too much, but I wanted to give a little bit of a background because when over the last couple of years, a lot of our artful activism sort of took a back seat to our work around rail policy and rail in the public interest. And so we started this podcast called Reconnect America. And we were thinking, wow, we helped write the Biden Rail Action Plan. We helped write Senator Markey's All Aboard Act. And of course, none of that went into effect, but it felt like, wow, we got a new niche. And the last time I went to DC prior to this fall, last time I went to DC this fall, I was just so shocked. And how I told people, I usually come here to do protests, and I'd much rather do this. I'd much rather be about defining the positive future, So so that didn't last very long, because though we started in January doing our thing, still supporting the breaching of the Snake River dams with creative tools like you see here, um, and this early action. By the time that inauguration happened on January 20th, it felt like our whole universe kind of shifted, because here we were again in a moment where people were afraid to take action. I was concerned that if people went to an overpass, that some of these thugs who've been released from prison might show up and shoot our people.
Mhm.
But that is exactly the time to lean back in, right? For people of privilege who don't have as complicated and a history of being a target by law enforcement as others do, that I think it's time for that to spend some of that privilege. And so we went out, and people were really, I think, kind of scared. Everybody was scared, not and it was unknown. Like, will there be protest, and what will happen when there's protest? So when we brought this "Immigrants Make America Great" banner over I-5 at 50th Overpass, I think January 23rd, people practically freaking jumped out of their cars. I mean, they were so happy, so relieved. The honking was just nuts. The media showed up for it. You know, we got on the news, and this is just a few people, 4 people at an overpass, with a banner that takes them about 3 hours to build, and we're reaching 18-20,000 people. So in an hour. So it's not a big sacrifice. It's we're proving that it's safe, and we're getting media attention, and we're giving a sense of moral of morale. We're lifting the morale of people. So one of the things as a movement organization that I've been very interested in over this many years is the idea of framework of grand strategy. And so I want to mention a few things about that. We are in a time of accelerated change. So this is complicated because we are change agents. We're not interested in defending the status quo, right? So that's why Backbone Campaign has always had a push-pull or propose and oppose combination, and we were really, like I said, leaning into that proposal part of our work. But now it felt really important to show up in a way that provided a different kind of populism, a populism that appeals to the best in people rather than the worst in people. And it's also important that we do this in a strategic way, because I truly believe that some of the people who voted for Trump might have voted for Bernie had Bernie been a candidate, or had at some other point. And we can't fight the oligarchy with guns and money, because they have a monopoly on guns and money. So we have to fight not in the domain of attrition conflict, but we can maneuver and do clever stuff. But fundamentally, we're fighting our battles on a domain of moral conflict. And the domain of moral conflict is all about hearts and minds. The 3 main principles of grand strategy are to expand alliances, increase the cohesion of those allies, and deepen the resolve of your people. And I should say that's part 1. Part 2 is the mirror image of that. Undermine the alliances of your opponent, decrease their cohesion, and weaken their resolve, instill doubt. And in the end, you really want to win without sowing the seeds of future conflict. So that's kind of grand strategy in a nutshell. The other thing that I learned from this framework, this comes from the Pentagon. Colonel John R. Boyd was credited for updating Sun Tzu's Art of War. And early on, I met Chuck Spinney, who worked directly with Dennis Kucinich many years ago. So when he had the Institute or the Department of Peace concept. So anyway, there's a concept in grand strategy called motherhood and mismatch, and actually, the idea is that you want your cause to be an unassailable good. You want it to be anyone who attacks your message to look like an asshole. So, so you don't want to look like an asshole. You want the people who attack you to look like an asshole. So you want to have an unassailable message, something that people say, yeah, that's me. That resonates with me. I'm attached to that value. And then, so then if the opponents attack you, they look like jerks, right? So, you also need to build cohesion. Movement is relational. So a social movement power is relational power. So this is our first crew out there on the first overpass, giving it a shot, right? Well, this was we hadn't done a lot of building in the warehouse since COVID, but this was a time when we restarted using our warehouse space on Vashon Island to build banners. And then we started really leaning into the overpass bannering as a tactic, and dedicated staff, a staff person, their only job was to recruit teams and organize overpass banners. So we started in January, and since January, we have done, I think, getting close to 75 overpass banner actions in the region, all of them bringing together people, having a relatively small ask for them, but lots of visibility, not just in on the freeway where they're reaching, like I said, 10,000 people plus an hour, but also in social media, Reddit and Instagram, and all kinds of folks are taking pictures. And they're expressing in their posts what a relief it is to see this. And these people are building relationships themselves and simultaneously backbone campaigns, making as many of these toolkits as we possibly can, shipping them out across the country, so that we and now we've shipped out about I think it's about 38 banner toolkits. So it sets them up with the net and the lettering material. We've trained 250. We're now just connected up with 5051 as the first organization to be a partner, which was great for us. Because we're not going to be a great partner for some organizations if they're too tied to the Democratic Party. It's not going to be a good fit for Backbone because we're fiercely independent of parties. So we also started working using our other innovative tactic, which is use of light projection on buildings. Simple, something that we've taught lots of people to do and shared lights around the country. So we got asked by SEIU, their international headquarters, to do 6 cities in 6 nights, and we were able to do that. You can't read that, but that's not so much important as that. Just you see that we're doing it, and that's Rumesa, who was the Tufts University student who was released, I think, last week. So we did 6 cities in 6 nights because that's what Backbone campaigns basically. We've been preparing for this moment, and opportunity favors the prepared. So it also feels like we couldn't just go in our rail work, even though we were still pushing bills in the legislature, and I'll get to that. But so we continue to do that work, and it's part of, again, a push-pull strategy. Let's push against. Let's protect, but let's also propose. Let's be a place for those with buyer's remorse to come to, and we're continuing to use rail as a way to do that. Of course, that can be done lots of ways. I think that single payer healthcare is a perfect pull strategy for populists who for all the reasons about the wastefulness of a private insurance system. It has nothing to do with health, except for denying service. So I just want to get you a sense of there's so many actions, so many places of this stuff. And again, building that community, building a sense of affinity groups. And that's what I'm really excited about with 51 is to bring this sense of, hey, we can build skills, we can build community. Backbone actually started as a bunch of potlucks. And actually now we're starting to use all that for large mobilization. So that's like kind of the next stage, right? People start taking action, and moving, then coming together for mass mobilization. So I think this is still running here. So we started bringing this stuff to that Seattle hands off rally, and that was very successful. It was really cool to bring out our We the People, this giant image that we have. We've got people in Olympia using the tactic there. This is a single person banner done by Jeff Snyder and Rod Tharp, super great collaborators. And I was reminded of how powerful this idea of We the People is, and how much people want to sign it. And so I'm going to keep going here. People really love to have that interaction with this object, to kind of commit themselves to something. It becomes kind of a ritual. And so besides the bannering, this is another thing we're going to really lean into. And I think we're going to make a couple other of those top sections, which have the preamble to the Constitution. And then we have lots of additions to it, or extensions, we call them. And so that was the hands-off rally. We have our people, some group went up to the border for a rally up there. I'm going to keep buzzing through this stuff. We partner with groups like Patagonia, wanted us to put an installation on top of their store in Seattle because of the public land stuff. So, as far as I know, that's still going. It's been going about a month. This is actually in DC, where we went for the April 30th, and this is where we're moving from mobilization to disruption. We had our globe out there. We had affinity groups figure out where they were going to block intersections in Washington, D.C. along Constitution Avenue. And so we had a morning march. So we were blocking people on a weekday, not going home to their families, not keep them from enjoying their weekends, but keep them from going to work in Washington, D.C. And where Washington, D.C., you've got, these federal workers who are like dying for somebody to take action in defense of them. And there were federal workers who were with us that day. And we were able to shut down traffic on Constitution Avenue, which is a major arterial, right, in Washington, D.C. for an hour at least. And that's at 7:30 in the morning to like 9 o'clock in the morning. And using the We the People, the Constitution, blocking traffic on Constitution Avenue in defense of the Constitution. It was pretty freaking awesome, in my opinion. So you get a sense of that. I'm going to keep rolling here. So here's the map of Washington, D.C. that morning. I'm the blue dot there, and all these red lines are all the entries into Washington, D.C. at about 9 o'clock in the morning. So this disruption was very effective, and I would say I went there with a little bit of sense of concern, or not quite dread, but the DC police have a culture that's very professional in the way they deal with protesters, and I was concerned that would have evaporated, but it didn't. The people who got arrested were people who wanted to get arrested. The other thing that was really important to me to do in Washington, D.C. was to start to create images for folks to defy orders. I want to have those who have taken an oath to the Constitution I want these images to be out there in the world so that people will be supporting and defending the Constitution, that they'll be living up to their oath. And so we did a series of these light projections on the National Gallery. Of course, the security came over and said, "You can't do this." I said, yes, we can. He said, I can put my hands in front of your light. And I said, I can take pictures of you. And he said, I can call the police. And I said, go ahead and call the police because they're going to tell you that we can do this. So I'm busy. Please get out of my way. So, so he did. It went fine. And actually, JD Vance motorcade by chance came zooming by. So right when we had this image up, we are duty bound to disobey, support, and defend the Constitution. So, I think that, this is some more of the next day, May Day, giant demonstration in DC and elsewhere. We brought out all 210 feet of the We the People, recruited people to carry it. They had such an incredible time. They love it. We had a hardy team at 85 degrees in weather and took a 2-mile march with that thing. But people were so happy and proud of what they did together. We stopped at the White House, and this is what the White House would have seen looking out their window to Lafayette Park. So Backbone Campaign is intending to bring this, make copies of this We the People preamble and try to take 3 across the country on 3 different pathways, south, middle, and north across the country to meet in DC for Labor Day. That's an emerging plan that we're hatching, because we think we're moving from disruption towards uprising. And this is no my official book of movement action plan. That's some other Bill Moyer, right? Really respected. Mary Lou Finley and Bill Moyer, the first, I really respect. But this is my sense, my just general sense that that's where we're headed this. And I don't think that sharing video is really going to work very well right now. So I'm going to keep moving forward here. And so this is the team that with 4 people, we were able to do those light projections, the road block. We didn't do the road blockades. We worked with a whole group of affinity groups, great local people. We just kind of came in to support. So then just last week, as soon as I got back from the freaking DC, I got a call on Monday. They say, can you come down to LA on Tuesday to do an action on Wednesday? They say you want to do light projections, but they're talking about projecting onto buildings with windows. You can't project onto windows. So I'm like, well, how about if we do giant balloons and weather balloons? And weather balloons are cool, but they're super expensive. The helium is like thousands of dollars, a couple $1,000s worth of helium, $60 worth of balloon. Each balloon's probably like $250 if it pops. So you got to be super careful. So you pack it in a truck and you line the truck with tarps. You remove things really carefully. You transport the balloons, and then you hook them up to the banner. Luckily, our team on Vashon was able to knock out that banner with letters that we have in our warehouse and made a few more letters. And these are 30-inch letters, not 17-inch letters. And we were able to, on Wednesday, pull off this banner lift in Los Angeles in support of workers who are negotiating a contract. But again, building up that social movement. SEIU National was the ones who had us do the light projection. SEIU 721 is a 120,000 member local in Los Angeles. So their people had a great time doing this. Saul Alinsky said that a good tactic is one that your people enjoy. So that went really well. And they said, oh, but we still want you to do light projection. So I had to figure that shit out. These guys had a great time. So those are SEIU workers. So we were able to figure out the light projection, but also I encouraged the SEIU. I was requested by a local small group that couldn't possibly afford the banners, etc. In order to do a lift and to oppose a local drilling operation. They're still drilling in neighborhoods in Los Angeles, which is just crazy. So I walked them through the process of building their banner, and we you can use this tarp that you can get from. We didn't have time to send them a banner toolkit, but we had net deer fencing at a local environmental justice group we worked with over in the past. They brought in that. We also borrowed back the lights that we had provided them to do the light projection. And these folks bought a tarp from U-Haul, and they cut letters. I walked them through this, how to do it. And SCIU really graciously lent the truck and had 4 of their workers there in at 6 o'clock in the morning to lift this, to prep the banner and lift it at 6:30 in the morning over this drill site in the middle of Los Angeles. So anyway, I think we're I'm going to wrap it up. Don't worry, you aren't stuck with me forever. But I've been like trying to play it calm, be really cool and be unassailable. And I'm starting to okay, at a certain point, we are going to rage against the machine, right? We are going to ridicule the shit out of these people. We are going to undermine do our very best to undermine their credibility and be as bravely defiant as we possibly can. So this picture, please don't share it with other people, but we are meeting the same group of artists that started Backbone Campaign, plus some other folks, to build so that when We the Peoples go across the country, we'll also be showing up with a day of the corruption carnival, the whatever the hell we're going to call it. And we thought, we'll have this really satirical harass, what do you call it? I used the word already. I'm losing my brain. But, we're going to make fun of them. We're going to, ridicule them. And we'll balance it with what our vision for the future is. But last night, I just came to the realization that fuck that shit. I have no interest in balancing that shit, not on the same day. I don't want to take anything away. I want to lean into the ridicule. Let's just torch them let's harass them. Let's insult them. Let's call them out for the assholes that are, the kleptocracy that they are. And then follow that up with the next day and do a beautiful, gigantic We the People, maybe, reminiscent of the AIDS quilt marching through DC. So that's kind of the direction that we're, going. I think we'll just leave it right there, and I can answer questions if you want. Hey, Dane, I saw you clapping. Thank you. I appreciate that. That's nice.
Bill, can you say something about the Activism, which really got me started with Backbone?
Well, for crying out loud, David, I've mentioned about every other thing but Activism. So you want to hear about Activism. Yeah. Okay, everybody. So that's how David and I are. We're close, so we can talk like that. So so Backbone Campaign, another tactic that we've helped develop is the use of kayaks in protest. And so that started in 2009 when our local community, there's a strategic lesson here too, though. When we started Backbone Campaign 21 years ago, we were kind of chasing that New York Times headline, trying to make national news, talking about national story. And what I realized a few years into it was that's really hard to do. It's really hard to deliver victory when you're dealing on the national front. And you all must know that, as well as anybody, right? So if you can get people to mobilize around something that is exposing the corruption, the collusion between corporate and elected power, that manifests locally, that makes a material difference in their life locally, they're much more apt to take action. Their press it's going to be easier to get press coverage, and the decision makers are more accountable. So we learned that lesson because our community on Vashon Moyer Island asked us to get involved when they've been fighting an industrial gravel mine going in on Moyer Island. And so we brought in our giant signs on the beach, and then we did a nonviolent direct action training, and then we blockaded roads into the facility. And that maneuver conflict, I mentioned that briefly in grand strategy, they were not expecting it. So we ruled that day and we got in the news, etc. And then 2 days later, had gone from 30 people on the beach in the beginning of December to 500 people on the beach in the beginning of January. And from that, we started using kayaks on the water, scrambling them into the construction site, interrupting construction. That, and I was thinking, do I have slides on that? I don't think I do. Not easily. But then that evolved into, I realized that, wow, when we're training people, that's when we started doing action camps. And we did 10 years of action camps. And every time we did it, no matter where we did it, whether it was Maryland or Michigan or Vashon Island, we always included on-water tactics. Because there's something about getting on the water together, doing similar in a way to carrying that giant we the people, something you can't do alone. But it's really extreme when you want to lift a banner on the water and you get your kayaks all together and then you lift a banner up from a kayak raft. Your life really depends on each other. And there's a lot so I find it's very strategic in creating cohesion and connecting people to the cause that they're working on, because a lot of times, usually it has something to do with the water, what's sacred, protecting the earth. So Backbone Campaign continued to do trainings, and then when Shell brought its oil rig to have its base in Seattle for Alaskan drilling, we asked the people who are organizing port commissioner meetings if we could start organizing for an on-water flotilla. And that's a whole long story, but it had its ups, it had its downs. We laughed, we cried, and in the end, Shell stopped its drilling campaign in the Arctic.
Well, Bill, you should say that 120 kayaks were preventing the towing out of that huge thing, preventing it from leaving Seattle to go out to tow it up to Alaska. So,
well, that's the myth.
Huh?
That's part of the story. But see, what happened actually is that you can't ask people to blockade something if they can't imagine themselves actually being successful doing that. And so what we did is we did all these trainings to create a family-friendly event, to create a picture. Right now, David, you're going to make me want.
Well, it's an amazing picture of all those 120 kayaks or whatever.
Yeah. Now you're really getting me excited. Yeah. So actually.
Anyway, they decided not to tow it out there. So that's,
well, it's not, again, I love that you're simplifying the story for everybody. But that's not actually how it went down. What happened actually is that Greenpeace controlled the list for mobilizing people in Seattle, and Greenpeace wanted to go first. So Greenpeace, and we got intelligence that the big rig was going to leave, but we already, I'll back up. We got the picture of all the people in front of the rig. Now I can share it. You're forcing my hand here, David. Okay. So we got all these people there, but they're not blockading anything. That thing is tied up to the dock. And all these photos, but Obama saw these photos, and he wanted to be the climate president. And he was planning a trip to Alaska, and so they discovered there's a rule: you can't during walrus migration you can't have drilling rigs closer than 15 miles apart. Well, Shell's drilling rigs were 9 miles apart, so that took them one away, and then Greenpeace tries to control the situation. Turns out we couldn't mobilize our people to go and blockade the thing because Greenpeace's tool for mobilizing didn't work that early in the morning, and they delayed us in mobilizing. Even I begged them to go out at sunset so we could backfill. Anyway, the thing actually moved out of the city pretty easily because Greenpeace fucked it up. But then their icebreaker, got a gash in it up in Dutch Harbor, and so they had to come back and here's they had to come back and then we took everything that we learned to Portland, and Greenpeace actually did a really good job in Portland. They had their climbers rappelling from the bridge with ropes underneath them, and we had a couple hundred kayaks on the water charging in front of the icebreaker that in the end did go. But with 200 people on the dock chanting "Stop that boat" and a riot on the water and national coverage and us looking like the motherhood and apple pie, well, they're looking like the assholes. That meant that Shell decided that the regulatory uncertainty of drilling in Alaska made it too much of a risk to continue their Arctic drilling, their U.S. Arctic drilling program. So that's a true story.
Yeah, that was amazing. I remember when that happened, and it was just so fabulous.
Right. It was fabulous. And, we've continued to use kayaks on the water. I'm most proud, honestly, of this kayak flotilla because this is 99% people of color. And, the Moving Forward Network is an environmental justice coalition that we participate in, both as Backbone and Solutionary Rail. And so we, helped organize a flotilla training here on Vashon, and then because they had a big grant, they brought people out here to get used to being on the water, and then they brought all those same people out on to the port of LA Long Beach. So it continues to be a very powerful tactic. I really think it's worth pursuing and learning about. But yeah, it's on the water is a very serious place to put people, and so one needs to take it super seriously because people do drown, and we don't want that to happen at all. So yeah. I had one other photo I was thinking I wanted to share with you, but it was I'm not sure if I'll find it, but just the other day before yesterday, we actually were able to the bill that we were working on in Congress, in the legislature, got signed into law, and that was the first time that's ever happened for me. So I'm pretty proud that our 1837, a bill for Amtrak Cascades performance, is now law in Washington State. Now we'll have to fight to implement it. And people like Allison and David, I know you took action for this, so thank you. And we got many comments that it was truly the grassroots effort that made all the difference in driving this bill forward and making it a priority. We even had legislators showing up for the bill signing that weren't sponsors and weren't on any of the relevant committees, but needed to get in the picture for some reason. But Julia Reed was our total champion and a great sponsor, and Representative Donahue loves rail and has been an ally. So we're happy that they were there. I'm happy anybody who wants to be associated with it. You can do anything if you don't need credit for it. That's what they say.
Okay, Chuck, you have a question or a comment? And for anybody who has a question, please use the handheld function like Chuck did.
Yeah. Thanks, Dan, for
And
running
Ray.
a great meeting, and Bill for an amazing presentation. This is really, really inspirational, and I think that this The tactics that you deploy, which are centered on strategy, that's the key.
Right.
They're not just random actions. They're connected to a larger vision and a larger strategy, and thinking about uh, how do we get to that justice future, that universal justice future, and then seeing our way forward through radical visioning, through really kind of reverse engineering from the future how we got there, right? Keep asking ourselves, what did we do? What did we do in terms of leadership development, in terms of actions, in terms of coalition building, so many things that you went through, and you're a fast speaker. I was trying to take notes. I am glad this is being recorded. I mean, I did write down a few things, but I'd love to probably just have a more detailed conversation with you offline.
Yeah, sure.
So that's something I certainly look forward to. So your process here goes from mobilization to disruption to uprising, and then what? The revolution?
Well, a positive program for sure. But I think we have to have a vision for the future. We better know what we want when we win, right? And
Absolutely.
and that's why I feel like it's so worthwhile. We're working on our podcast. I'm going to actually put a link in the chat. Actually, podcast.
So
A link in the chat for that.
yeah.
But I do think, I think we need to have a positive program. We need a platform.
Yep.
Just like the original Backbone had a platform planks on it. We were doing that stuff. I think we need to have a platform as progressives. We need to know, how are we going to approach trade? Like, I think we should have a trade policy that's about standards, not tariffs, and that nothing that's made by child labor gets in the country, supposedly. So let's make it so nothing exploits workers or, damages the environment. It should be at least as strong or better than the standards we have in this country. And I know those are going down right now, but anyway, things like that, universal health care, social housing, money out of politics, those sorts of things. I think we need to have a platform, and I don't know, I don't think I'm qualified to say whether we win, without a Democratic Party, if we have to have a new party, or if what I do know is we have to have a movement. Regardless of whether the Democratic Party or the Republican Party or some other party moves into power, we can't win if we don't have a social movement, and a social movement that, yes, tactics serve strategy, strategy serve goals, and goals serve vision. So we have to have a movement with vision.
Absolutely. Yeah. I could ask a lot more questions right here. I don't want to take away from the meeting and other people who want to contribute, but definitely let's talk in the next week or so. I'm going to be hanging out with Rob Call, working on building this plan. So maybe do you have any free time over the next week?
Sure. Nothing's like free time, but I'm happy to connect.
Relatively. Yeah. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I'm not flying to any place, thank God, as far as I know.
Well, I'm here in DC, so anytime you need I've got Solidarity Housing if you need that, and
well, we might be talking to you about Labor Day.
Yeah, right? Well, and so just the other point that's really, really, really frustrating to me is that the Democrats in particular, they're not built to be an opposition party, right? They don't know what to do. They're frozen, and they won't even use the F word. They won't even call the fascism what it is. They won't even use that word. It's so absolutely mind-boggling and frustrating to me. And trying to work, with my legislative partners, Ro Khanna and Ed Markey. So let's talk offline. I don't want to.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Simon.
Crazy.
Okay, Simon.
Yeah, so I was really interested to listen, and so much of what you do seems fundamentally based in reaching out to these other partner organizations, providing them with resources or partnering with them like local organizations and supporting those efforts. And in my time that I've been sort of involved with this work, one of the most daunting things I've found is that there's so many different disparate groups, and many of them are mostly volunteer, all over the country or even within a state. And so I guess I'm curious, and I guess another aspect of this, there's like certain people, certain organizers at the top that know everybody, right? They have all of these interpersonal connections, and that's great and very valuable. But I've wondered a lot about when you say building a movement, just the ability to connect, the ability to build connections and maintain those connections. And in the time with the Backbone campaign, what have you learned about what are some of the most effective ways to actually build and maintain connections across groups and issues to try to build that movement?
Well, we could probably have a lot of like things you shouldn't do. Not to mention the things you probably should do. I think of it as I like the idea of polycentric power, where you're creating local autonomous movement power, and you do not necessarily entrust everything to a national head. I there's that piece. I think that's something I'm interested in. And I don't want to be too theoretical about it, but a thing you shouldn't do is you shouldn't create a cancel culture, in your movement and like purity tests that make it impossible for people to join. You need a kind of maturity where people aren't in this process of like differentiating themselves from their freaking parents, and thus they're pushing everybody else away. I think that's a very dangerous thing, and that has actually, I think, been something that it can be. That was perhaps the COINTELPRO of our time. We might find out someday that the cancel culture could have been supported by others, our enemies. I think we really do need to also focus on the collusion between corporate and elected power at the local level, because social movement and has to make a material difference in people's lives, and people mobilize to protect what they love, the people they love, the places they love. So I think for the single payer issue, I think when it's single payer, an abstract concept, it's very difficult to build movement power around it. It's almost, it's an ivory tower almost, like, kind of experience, right? Because only so I wonder with the single payer stuff, if there wouldn't be a lot of value in concentrating on the abuses and the corruption and the denial of care. Like, let's just keep hammering at every local level the inhumanity of the insurance system and how it is killing people, and to create it to make them so and because everybody will know somebody. But if it's at the national level, that's one thing. But if it's at the local level, people actually know those people. And if we could be mobilizing people to support and defend folks' ability, access to care at the local level, and continue to demonize this corrupt system, then yeah, of course you have to have a vision, and a national strategy and a local strategy. But I think that there might be a lot of work to be done to demonize the single payer. I think there's also potential allies who are Trump voters, if you will, because I think that the fact that Obamacare, and I know I'm kind of talking to the choir on this, was like, enshrining insurance companies for delivering what should be a human right, and paying them double to do it, is not a very good solution. And I think when we can say to our so-called opponents, when we can counter the divide and conquer strategy of the oligarchs, and say to folks, you're right about Obamacare. It was too complicated, and all it did is enshrine the healthcare, and we're right there with you. This system is messed up, and we want a system that serves everybody, so that you aren't going into medical debt, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't know. I kind of took it a little bit more than maybe you wanted, but I wanted to bring it home to PNHP.
Thank you.
David?
Well, Backbone now is heavily invested in solutionary rail. And you didn't talk too much about that. So maybe the best thing is to go to the website and get hooked up and watch those podcasts and learn about that, because this is something really important that a lot of people are going to buy into. And there's a lot of different types of communities and unions and whatever that are going to be positively affected by solutionary rail, which is basically making all our railroads public and serving getting our diesel stuff off the road. So it's going to help climate change. I think tribal areas can have solar collectors and
there's lots of intersections.
Yeah, there's just so
yeah. I think that's really important. I mean, I did in my notes for this, I did say I did want to end with like creative vision. Though we started the year with this, we're just going to pull people with buyer's remorse. That is where we're going to go, though, right? We are going to try to pull when they have buyer's remorse towards a common vision. And the Solutionary Rail podcast we're building gradually, because we're a small organization. It takes a lot. We're building this podcast curriculum. It's an audio only podcast, but we have rail bites that are like these small pieces, bite size. But the main episodes are taking people through. There'll be 12. The first series will be 12 main episodes, and if you listen to 1, 2, and 3 that are out now, I think you'll get a sense of where we're going, and why it's important. Because I do think that infrastructure, it means what happens below, right? Everything else is super important, and I think the sense of people being the grievance, where there is legitimate grievance of people being left behind. 50 years of neoliberal capitalism has literally left people behind by reshaping how our railroads work and who they serve, and how much track is out there. We've lost 70,000 miles of track, not to mention the vast majority of our passenger service, and now shippers can't get service because there's no obligation for this except for wheat, coal, and oil for the railroads to serve them. So we have all these trucks on the freeway that shouldn't be on the freeway, and it's doing all this damage. So yeah, I'd love it if people could check out Solutionary Rail. And we are a small organization. I was a friend of mine passed away last fall, and I just want to do Chris Narrison in Spokane, and he left us basically a year's worth of budget. And so that has given Backbone Campaign the capacity to invest in 2 extra staff people. And that's why we've been able to show up like we're showing up right now. But my job, right, as the executive director, is to grow that, not to shrink that. And so this next year is going to be about growing into that new, being big and really occupying the space of artful activism as fully as we can, as is needed, and also expanding our visionary solutionary work too. Thanks, David, for bringing that up. I appreciate it.
Okay, Sherry?
Well, Bill,
Hi,
you've
Sherry.
done a wonderful job of in speaking, but I'm going to, as a complete gear shift into something to celebrate the friendship between Washington State and British Columbia that's been going on for generations. And so my thought is, how about organizing a joint BC-Washington celebration at the Peace Arch in Blaine between from July 1st, which is Canada Day, to July 4th, which is Independence Day. And
I'm not sure how much organizing needs to be done as compared with just publicity to get people there and some signs, banners celebrating the joint fortunes of BC and Washington.
Well, I can't argue with you. I mean, obviously, I think that's a brilliant idea. I think it'd be a really cool time to do that too, on those the coalescence, the overlap of those holidays. Certainly, we would do our best to support such a thing. Obviously, you saw the banners at Peace Arch Park in the slideshow, so obviously there's interest in that. My mother's a Canadian, so I have an interest in that too, but I'm not in the place of making additional commitments at this time. See how maturely done that was? I will happily send banners to everyone. I'll let people know, but we've got a festival. Yeah, I love the idea. Let us know if there's something we can do.
Okay, thanks.
I will follow someone else's lead.
At my age and having just moved into a senior living facility, I'm not in a position to take a lead on this. So I'm searching.
Well, you know what? Instead of maybe you should seed one of these enthusiastic 50-51 or indivisible groups, or put it up on Reddit as an idea, and let somebody else take credit for it and do it. But somebody who's less committed than I am. Something like that. They're all committed.
Overscheduled, I think, is the word you're looking for.
Overscheduled, yeah. Dude, I have gone in 8 weeks. I've been in four states. I'm about to pull out my hair. All I want to do is sit in the garden and pull weeds. That's all I really want to do. I am going nuts. I want to sit at my drum set. I want to play my drum set, and I want to pull weeds. That's it.
Okay. How about putting your drum set in the Peace Arch and pulling the weeds there?
Not a chance. You think you can trick me that easy? This is not my first rodeo.
I'm teasing you.
I know, but I do think it's a great idea, and I'd be happy to provide banners. I'd be happy to provide an inflatable globe. Let's get some folks who put it out there. Say, hey, somebody ought to do this. This would be cool. Wouldn't it be cool if? Wouldn't it be beautiful if somebody?
Yeah.
Alan, what do you think? What is this craziness? How's things going for you as you're coming into this? Do you have an activist background? Why did you sign up to be such a radical?
Yeah, so I'm a third-year undergrad student, UW. I'm in the SNAP program, the Student for National Health program at UW. And I was actually going to contact you after this just to talk a little bit, maybe of trying to get with that backbone thing. I think it would be great if more of these students, including myself, get exposure to this, because I think it's a great idea.
Yeah.
So I was going to contact you after to talk, but yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, you could. We do some of the weekly banners are up at 50th Overpass.
Yeah.
So that's an easy trip. It'd be fun to teach give you all a how-to on light projection and loan you some lights to go, and make some trouble.
Yeah.
And yeah, that'd be super fun.
I'll contact you after that. Yep.
Cool.
Yeah. Here, I'm trying to put something in the chat. This is Allison.
Hi, Allison.
Anyway, I was thinking there are organizations on the Canada side of BC, and I was going to put my address in the chat for you, Peggy, I think it is.
Sherry was actually bringing that up.
Yeah.
And I'll put my email address in the chat, and I'll ask my daughter who lives in Vancouver, BC, if she knows of organizations that might be helpful. So here, let me just put it in there.
And then I can pass it along to the folks who went up for the other Peace Arch action. So maybe you're making something happen, Sherry, without even getting out of
Okay.
your.
I can put my email address in the chat also.
Yeah,
All right.
okay, I just did mine, and I can write down yours. Yeah, I feel sort of oversubscribed myself, so I'm not going to volunteer for anything. But I was, but I was on, you know, and while I was listening to you, Bill, I was weeding my garden, so it's been great. But I was thinking,
It's not really fair, but okay, I respect you.
Let's see, what's your name again? Not Peggy.
Sherry.
Whatever your name is. Oh, Sherry, thank you.
Yeah.
That you need to, it not simply gets people together for the joint holidays, but have a reason for it, you know? Have something
Yes.
that you're trying to get done together.
Well, it isn't so much get done as to celebrate our over century of peace
Yeah,
between
pretty
the
remarkable.
two peoples and our connection with as human beings across the border. That's what the idea is.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Put my email in the chat.
Oh, let's see.
All right.
Anyway,
I did put a link in the chat because this is my job, and I have been blessed to have this as my job for the last 20 plus years. And so Backbone Campaign is stretched, and we had because of people's generosity, we've been able to do that. But it is really necessary. It's actually critical that I let people know that there is no big foundation behind Backbone Campaign. It is individual donors, family foundations, some a little bit of that, and individual donors that make us go. And I've got the job of having to double our budget in the next year. So anyway, I just want to encourage you to visit Backbone Campaign and become part of the Lumbar Club that gives a little bit each month. David's part of that. That's really helpful. Maybe some others are here are also part of that. If you're not part of the Lumbar Club, now is the perfect time. Just like planting a tree. Would have been better 20 years ago, but today is the second best time to join the Lumbar Club.
Okay, anyone else have a comment or question for Bill?
Before he keeps asking for money.
Yeah, exactly. Trying to shut him up here.
I know. Watch out.
Okay, and I think.
Okay.
All right. Well, Mindy, no questions. All good.
No, I just think it's fantastically wonderful, the work that Backbone Campaign does. It's, I mean, it needs to be like, 100-fold spread all around the country. But, we've just really, I just admire the work. It's fabulous.
Thank you so much.
What we really, really need is direct action.
Yeah, and a vision. And like we have those single payer, those national health cards, that we use as yard signs. We build to be as yard signs. That would be a great thing to be resurrecting. Those are on our Flickr page. Someplace I could try to find a link.
Oh, you have a Flickr page?
Yeah.
I have a Flickr page, but it's mostly got birds on it.
Oh, your Flickrs are different than our Flickrs. Our Flickrs like a place where you put photos. But and there's no E at the end. It just goes, yeah, that's
That is
funny.
the same Flickr.
Because I kept getting pictures of Flickr every time I tried to put in the URL for the website because I was spelling it with an E.
Yeah, no,
And it's
no,
not that. Then I would get,
no. That's the
Yeah.
one where my birds are.
okay.
I might also mention
All
that,
right. Well,
that Canada has got the the right kind of health insurance.
right.
My daughter had her grandson up in Canada, and no worries about paying the bills and all that. So, so
No.
Canada can be a shining example for what we could do.
For sure.
That's how PNHP was founded. Was in the mid 80s when Canada's federal umbrella was put in sort of over the umpteen different provincial plans that started first in 1947 in Saskatchewan. But in the mid 80s, some folks in Cambridge, Massachusetts said, hey, look what Canada just did. We should do that in the US. And that was basically the start of Physicians for a National Health Program.
Yeah.
What year was that? What was the year?
Well, I'm not sure 84 was the time that Canada put in that umbrella.
Oh,
The founding of PNHP, I think, was a couple of years later.
yeah, 86, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah,
Okay, I'm looking at the Flickr pictures. Great, great, great images.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not seeing
And
it.
we have the image for the front and the back of that health security card. And
How do I find that one in particular? There's a bunch of pictures.
and we have 28,000 or 25,000 or something like that. So it's ridiculous. Yeah.
Cool.
But we also have a casket with health insurance company logos.
That's a little sensitive right now with the guy getting shot in New York last year.
Right. Well, you know what? I don't know. I'm like, okay, let's get over that and let's take on those bastards.
Yeah.
Like,
We just don't want to
like-
use that particular imagery.
even if it's about the denial of care for the people who are. Anyway, there's a whole album there that has images of the front and the back of the card we developed in collaboration with you all years ago. So,
Well, thanks again, Bill, for this meeting. We're all going to sleep better tonight.
Yeah.
And we can rewatch your wise words many, many times on our YouTube channel.
Oh,
yeah.
And
While you're weeding.
Before you go, I just have to
get some lumbar club. You can contribute, $5-10 a month if you want, but it's helpful.
Well, what's the address? Can you put that in the chat?
You betcha.
Okay, thanks.
While you're doing that, Bill, I just have to brag. I have taken the train from Vancouver to Montreal years ago when my children were small and the 4-year-old had a meltdown at 4 o'clock in the afternoon each day. I've also taken the train from Seattle to Los Angeles and back, as well as from Seattle to Vancouver and back. I have also taken the train from Adelaide to Perth in Australia. The one that's missing, and I don't think I'll ever get to do it now, is the Trans-Siberian Railroad from Vladivostok to St. Petersburg, which is the biggest one in the world. Oh, and I did do an overnight train from Beijing to Xi'an in China.
Oh, wow.
Nice.
Hmm?
I've taken trains in China and India and Europe and a little bit on the East Coast, but not very much here. you can't get any place. You're on time if you get there the same day. So,
That's true. With my
but yeah,
granddaughter,
that's awesome. The Siberian,
I went
they
down
talk. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying in Europe with our 15-year-old granddaughter, I went from Paris to Madrid to Barcelona and then along the Côte d'Azur and into Milan, and then later from Milan up to Geneva.
Oh,
And then back to Charles de Gaulle Airport.
Now you're bringing up all kinds of stories that are inappropriate for to be shared on a Zoom call. So for me, so I was just like, I need to go see my wife, and yeah. But I did want to say that the Trans-Siberian Railroad is the railroad we mention all the time with Solutionary Rail because it is electrified. And just like people say, oh, you can't do it for long distances, blah, blah, blah. That's silly. Poppycock.
Yeah, you
All right.
can.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. I really appreciate everybody
Thank you
hanging
so
out.
much.
okay.
Have a great night. Good to meet you all.
Yep.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank
Be
you.
in touch. Okay.
Bye. Thanks so
Everybody
much.
coming. Okay, we're gonna end this when I
Yep.
put the one.